Good evening, everyone. I'm going to discuss about elite theory. Learning objectives. First is to describe elite theory. Second is to narrate its evolution. And third, discuss its philosophy. Question and answer. What is the definition of elite theory? A theory that the upper class elites have always exercised great influence over public policy. Elite refers to anyone who ranks highly on a scale of social values, political influence, material wealth, or intellectual capacity. The unequal distribution of resources, leadership abilities, and political power is the foundation of the elite theory. This theory aims to explain the power differences present in the contemporary day. Discussions between elites and common people frequently provide insight into talks between marginalized groups and the nation. What is the core of the elite theory? The core of the elite theory is that in any society, there is and must be a minority of the population that makes the major decisions in the society and rules the majority. This minority is called the governing elite or political class. They have their influence on government decisions and policy making. The minority gains dominance due to influence through certain social, religious, heredity, or personal qualifications, achievements, and this is beyond the concept of ordinary elections. What are the basic characteristics of the elite theory? First is the power is concentrated and only a small number can have authority. Second, the elites are unified and they share a common culture. Third, the non-elites are diverse and powerless. Fourth, elites' interests are unified due to common backgrounds and positions. And last, the defining characteristic of power is institutional position. So what is the elite model of public policy? So in the upper part, we have the elite. They do the policy direction. In the middle part are the officials and administrators. They do the policy execution. And last, at the bottom, are the masses. The elite model, also known as the elite theory, views public policy as the preferences, priorities, values, and interests of a ruling elite. In addition to the ruling elite, there are two further tiers of power. The masses are at the bottom. This group is referred to as the people that have no power. They are basically powerless, poorly organized, and open to manipulation from above. The masses are politically and economically exploited, and they are economically dependent. The masses are far from the traditional democratic public, where societies hold the key to power. It is because they are disorganized. The way that information is transmitted from the elite to the general public can be seen. They decide everything. The administrators put it into action, and the people simply have to follow. According to Zimmerman, 1995, public policies in some ways do not represent the demands of the masses, but rather reveal the preferences of the ruling class. Elites want what is the best for them, and what is best for them is often thought to be good for society as a whole. What are the two ideas on which the outlook of the Italian school of elitism was based? First, power lies in the position of authority in key economic and political institutions. Second, the psychological difference that sets elites apart is that they have personal resources, for instance, intelligence and skills, and a vested interest in the government, while the rest are incompetent and do not have the capabilities of governing themselves. The elite are resourceful and strive to make the government work. For In reality, the elite would have the most to lose in a failed state. What is the origin of the elite theory? There were known classical authors who wrote about the elite thesis itself in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Each of them conducted research on the political system in their time period and presented their findings. On the basis of this, they all assumed that the elite theory involved the rulers, and the commoners subject the society. One of them is Gaetano Mosca, an Italian political scientist who published The Ruling Class, in which he first discussed his views on elitism. Regardless of the type of government, he claimed that the minority always holds the power. He held that two opposite tendencies are inherent in society. First, the aristocratic tendency toward keeping power in the hands of those who govern, and the democratic tendency to renewal by means of elements derived from those who govern. Muska failed to locate the world political elites, though he called them the governing class, the ruling class, or the political class. In his research, Mosca came to the conclusion that neither a single man nor the entire population can rule. The elite minority, in his opinion, holds the key to governing the organization. With fewer people, the organization was simpler. Information could be transmitted much more quickly, and a small, well organized group could react quickly to any change. Muska and other early advocates of elite theory believed that elitism was not a strategy to oppress or enslave the masses. Elites influenced the masses more than they would otherwise. Although this does not imply that the masses or society had no impact on the behaviors of the elite. In addition to Muska, Vilfredo Pareto is another early proponent of elite theory. In 1916, Pareto published The Mind of Society, which contained his theory on elites. Pareto posited that in a society with truly unrestricted social mobility, elites would be made up of the most gifted and deserving people. However, in social in actual societies, elites are those who are best at using the two models of political rule, force and persuasion, and who typically benefit from significant advantages like inherited wealth and family connections. According to Pareto, political power is best described as a continuous circulation of elite groups that hold power because their members are more intelligent, educated, cunning, and others. That is regarded as one of their exceptional personal traits that gave them the power to govern the general public. Pareto's ideas of the perpetual cycle of elite groups can be summed up as powerful organizations emerging in society, assuming power, losing their political vigor over time, and eventually being replaced. What are the two types of elites? Pareto emphasized that psychological and intellectual superiority of elites, believing that they were the highest accomplishers in any field. He discussed the existence of the two types of elites, a governing elite and a non-governing elite. A governing elite comprising individuals who directly or indirectly play some considerable part in government. So in other words, it is the group of people that controls and runs a country, while the non-governing elite is comprising the rest of the individuals. They are the industrialists, financiers, religious leaders, social reformers, and thinkers. Pareto's main discussion focuses on the governing elite. Governing elites are directly and indirectly concerned with administration. What is the ancient perspective on elite theory? Polybius, a Greek historian, described that the elite theory as autocracy. He propounded that three sources of political power, monarchy, autocracy, and democracy, would eventually be corrupted into a debased form of itself, if not balanced in a mixed government. Monarchy would become tyranny, democracy would become mob rule, and rule by elites would become corrupted in what we call oligarchy. Polybius effectively said this is due to a failure to properly apply checks and balances between the three mentioned firms, as well as subsequent political institutions. What are the assumptions of the elite theory? The assumptions of the elite theory are captured by Thomas D. and Harmon Ziegler as follows. Number one, society is divided into the few who have power and many who do not. Only a small number of persons allocate values for society. The masses do not decide public policy. Number two, the few who govern are not typical of the masses who are governed. Elites are drawn disproportionately from the upper socioeconomic strata of society. And third, the movement of non-elites to elite position must be slow and continuous to maintain stability and avoid revolution. Only non-elites who have accepted the basic elite consensus can be admitted to governing circles. Fourth, elites share a consensus on the basic values of the social system and the preservation of the system. Fifth, public policy does not reflect the demands of the masses, but rather prevailing values of the elite. Changes in public policy will be incremental rather than revolutionary. And active elites are subject to relatively little direct influence from apathetic masses. So elites influence the masses more than the masses influence the elites. So what are the connection between system, group, and elite theory? To recap, systems, group, and elite theories are orthodox theories that have dominated thinking concerning the way authorities make policy decisions. Central to the analysis which these theories offer is the role assigned to government in policy making. So all three theories gave a pivotal role in government in the value allocation process. So in systems theory, for example, the government is located in the black box where inputs are converted into outputs. Group theory, on the other hand, assigns the government the role of the empire in the struggle among societal groups to reflect their interests in public policy. Elite theory favors government with the crucial role of carrying into effect, through its officials and agencies, the values and preferences which the dominant few want to be reflected in public policy. The underlying assumption about government in these theories is that government is an impartial mediator of conflict in society, and impliedly a preserver of the social order. Summary of my report. So first, it reflects the values and preferences of the elite. Second, the ruling elite has the presence and influence on governmental decision making. Third, society is divided between the haves and have-nots. So the elites is the selected few, but does not reflect the need of the masses. Fourth, elite consensus includes private enterprise and private property and favors minimal government intervention in big businesses. And fifth, focus on the role of leadership in policy formation and few governed by many. So essentially, this theory explains how a small group of ruling elite own, manage, and dominate society and economically control the rest of us. So thank you for listening, and these are my references. Once again, good evening.